Well, there isn't just one drug crisis going on in America at the moment. There's the one you read about a lot, drug overdoses, mostly by opioids. Fentanyl plays a big part. Those have been rising for years, and they now kill more Americans every year than the entire Vietnam War did over a decade. So there's that. It's horrible, and it needs more attention. But there's another drug crisis going on. It may not be as deadly, but it's worrying, and no one ever mentions it. At this moment, more than 1 in 6 American adults is on some kind of psychiatric drug. Among Americans over the age of 12, 1 in 8 are taking antidepressants, a 65% increase compared to just 1999, 20 years ago. Among women, 16.5% are now on antidepressants. 1 in every 6 women in America is now taking a pill just to cope with feeling miserable. What is going on? After antidepressants, the most common psychiatric drugs are anti-anxiety medications like Xanax. These drugs are typically very addictive, and abuse of them has soared along with the abuse of other opioids. Try to get off one of those benzo drugs. You can die from withdrawal. People do. But our frenzy for brain pills is hitting kids as well. Almost 10% of all American children are diagnosed with something called ADHD by the age of 17. Half of those kids, fully half, 1 in 20 overall nationally, take medication for it. And some of these drugs are very powerful, more than we may realize. One of the most famous anti-ADHD drugs is called Adderall. It's an addictive amphetamine. It's banned in Japan. It's rarely prescribed in Europe. But in America, millions of people have received diagnoses and received it. Since it can improve focus, there is an upside. Adderall is routinely abused by students to help with academic performance and also by adults to cope with demanding jobs. Forget using coffee to wake up in the morning. In this country, millions of people are taking amphetamines just to adequately service the market. Is this pill habit making the country happier? Is it making the country more sane? Of course not. And the proof is in the numbers. The suicide rate is the highest it's been in half a century. It's still climbing. Among those who haven't taken their own lives, self-reported happiness is lower than it was a decade ago. This is particularly true in our country. This is not something that's happening worldwide. The OECD recently looked at antidepressant use in 25 wealthy countries. The U.S. was far ahead of every other except one, Iceland. Another study compared American children with German and Dutch kids. American children take 3 times as many psychotropic drugs to fight ADHD, 3 times as many antidepressants, about twice as many antipsychotic drugs. We don't have data for every country worldwide, but it seems possible that American children and adults are both the most medicated groups in the world. Why is this happening, and is the country doing anything about it? Well, to the extent the country is, we seem to be looking for another drug with a new high to fix our problems. Right now, legalizing marijuana is very popular. A lot of Republicans are behind it. The obvious downsides to this are suppressed. Politicians rave about the tax revenue. They're greedy. They always have been, always will be. While the advocates discuss the supposed medical benefits of medical marijuana, and there may be some, there probably are. But there are also downsides. Once it's legalized everywhere, we'll doubtless see some other illegal drug like ecstasy or LSD touted as a fix for our country's problems. You're already seeing that with microdosing for LSD. At some point, you begin to wonder, is it really America's brains that are sick, or is there something bigger going on? Maybe a problem with the society. Everywhere you look, things that make people happy seem to be vanishing. Americans report having fewer close friends. They're getting married less. They're having fewer children. Some are having no children because they can't in a lot of cases. They can't afford it. Their families are smaller and they live farther away. Confidence of government also declining, so people feel like they lack control over their lives. Jobs confer less dignity if they can get them at all. Dramatic demographic change means many Americans don't recognize where they grew up. Their own towns are unrecognizable to them. Many can't relate to their own neighbors. Sometimes they even can't understand the language. We're told that we're not supposed to worry about this, but in real life people do, and why wouldn't they? And then, of course, other physical problems, massive obesity ruining public health and causing misery as well. There's a lot of stuff going on. But the point is, instead of trying to address these crises, politicians focus on economic growth rather than the problems that caused all of this in the first place. Incomes in America more than doubled compared to 40 years ago. But are we better off? Probably not. Maybe we should stop and think about that for a minute. So, as we said, there's a lot going on in America, so it's a time to ask serious questions of America's leaders, maybe even the new Speaker of the House. CNN had a chance to talk to Nancy Pelosi yesterday. What did they ask? About her ice cream choices.
She attributes her boundless energy to Italian genes. It's certainly not a balanced diet. Dark chocolate and ice cream. Vacaro's has been her favorite since she was a little girl.
The chocolate, not the chocolate chip, the chocolate. I like my chocolate unadulterated.
And that was fascinating. She doesn't like her chocolate unadulterated. She likes her chocolate unadulterated. I didn't know that.
No white chocolate, no milk chocolate,
yeah.
Dark chocolate, period.
Dan Bongino is a former Secret Service agent, author of the book Spygate, The Attempted Sabotage of Donald J. Trump. He joins us tonight. Dan, you've written a lot and talked a lot about press hostility toward Trump. I think I'm much less bothered by that than I am by the fawning suck-uppery we just watched. I mean, in other words, if the press was hostile to everybody in power, I'd be pretty satisfied. But to see them suck up to someone who was third in line in secession in this country, one of those powerful people in the world, and they're asking about ice cream at a time like this, what is that?
I mean, remember the Beto O'Rourke phenomenon, Tucker, in Texas, where people, the left-wing media types, walked with him through rallies. They said, "Oh, Beto, you're a rock star. You're a rock star. Listen, you're a journalist. You're supposed to be reporting on him. You're not supposed to be fawning over him. You might as well have asked Nancy Pelosi for an autograph after that thing and a selfie to put on Instagram." But Tucker, what's really funny about this is you're right. Yeah. Listen, I don't care about these soft kind of lifestyle pieces happen all the time. The problem is when they happen on Donald Trump, it's always painted to paint him as transactional and greedy and self-centered. I'll give you a perfect example. You want to talk ice cream? Let's talk turkey and ice cream right now. Remember the ice cream story with Trump? Donald Trump gets 2 scoops of ice cream, and everybody else at the table when he's around gets 1. This is one of the dumbest stories. We were all dumber for having heard it. But it's a similar thing. When it's a lifestyle story about Trump, it's meant to paint him as some kind of a self-centered jerk. Meanwhile, the story probably wasn't even accurate. It's just incredibly stupid.